Our NHI Radiology podcast series. Friends, today we will be covering a very interesting organ of human system, the vocal cord. I am here, Dr. Bose, Senior Consultant Pulmonologist. With me, Dr. Anshika Gulati, our Chief Radiologist. She will talk about the anatomy of the larynx, the reason for certain vocal cord palsy, followed by a very interesting case. Over to Anshika.
Hello friends, recently we had a lady 59 years old who presented to us with hoarseness of voice for the last 6 months and it was gradually progressive. So we thought we'll take this opportunity to discuss about approach to hoarseness. So what happens? Larynx is the voice box which is responsible for voice production. So any pathology affecting the larynx or its nerve supply will cause hoarseness of voice. So we'll just have a brief review of larynx and its nerve supply and then we'll go on to the CT to look for that exact case. This is a model that I've brought to represent larynx. This is a hollow tube and larynx, as we all know, it sits on top of the trachea and it is actually the gateway to the trachea. And larynx is called the voice box responsible for voice production. It is divided into 3 parts: supraglottis, glottis and subglottis. And for voice production, the main action happens at the level of glottis, which contains the vocal cords. Now, apart from voice production, the larynx, that is the gateway to the trachea, it serves 2 more important functions. One, while you are swallowing food, it closes down to prevent aspiration. And second, while you are breathing, it opens up to allow for free flow of air. How larynx does that? There are 2 gateways. One is at the level of the supraglottis. There is a leaf-like structure like this. This is called the epiglottis. It opens and closes to allow for movement of air and to prevent aspiration.
Yeah, this is it. You see, this is an epiglottic filament.
This is the epiglottis. It is a leaf-like structure. And so open on either side of the epiglottis, these are 2 curtains. These are the aryepiglottic folds. So this becomes the inlet of the larynx, formed by the epiglottis in the center and aryepiglottic folds on either side. This is the laryngeal inlet. So this becomes one gateway at the level of the supraglottis, which will control the opening and closing of the larynx. And the second gateway is at the level of the glottis, which is formed by the vocal cords. So if you look within, these are the vocal cords, right? So these will open and close like that. There's a sideway movement like a shutter of the window. So the vocal cords open and close like this. The main muscle that is responsible for opening of the vocal cords is the posterior cricoarytenoid muscle, which is supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. And the main muscle that is responsible for closing of the glottis is the thyroarytenoid muscle, which is again supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So we see any pathology affecting the recurrent laryngeal nerve will cause vocal cord palsy, and the patient will present with 3 main symptoms. 1, hoarseness of voice, obviously because the vocal cords are responsible for voice production. Secondly, he'll present with aspiration because of food getting into the trachea, because the glottis is not able to close properly. And third symptom will be dyspnea, because it is not able to open while you're trying to breathe. So this lady presented to us with hoarseness of voice. This is about the anatomy and function of the larynx. Next is the nerve supply. As we have seen, the main nerve that supplies the larynx is the recurrent laryngeal nerve, which is a branch of the vagus nerve. I'll just take you to the CT now and I'll show you the course of the vagus nerve as well as the recurrent laryngeal nerve, because pathology anywhere along the course of the vagus or the recurrent laryngeal nerve can lead to vocal cord palsy.
So friends, before Anshika takes you to that rare case, what you want to say that one has to understand the anatomy and the distribution of the recurrent laryngeal nerve to know the possible, because the flip-flop movement of the vocal cord is a function of the recurrent laryngeal nerve, as she explained beautifully the anatomy. So friends, as you know, the causes of vocal cord palsies are infections like Epstein-Barr infections or COVID time also we had vocal cord. There could be post-surgical like thyroid surgeries, etc., neck surgery, cancer. But many times what happens, some kind of organ enlargements, as you said, the left heart enlargements, left atrial can give you some hoarseness, the Lautner syndrome. But this is a very unusual case which Anshika will tell you. And please go through her, this one of the rarest cases, what she's going to, the involvement of recurrent laryngeal nerve atypically. Over to Anshika.
I'll show on CT.
Hello friends, welcome to NHI Radiology podcast series. I'm Dr. Anshika Gulati from National Heart Institute and today we are discussing a very interesting case. This was a 59 years old lady who presented to us with hoarseness of voice for the last 6 months. It was insidious in onset and gradually progressive. We did a CT neck for her in free breathing state with special instructions to avoid swallowing and coughing. And what we found was right vocal cord palsy of distal vagal type. This is the scan. At the level of the glottis, we see the posterior part of the right vocal cord is thickened and medially rotated, which suggests palsy of the right posterior cricoarytenoid muscle, which is the principal abductor of the vocal cords. Anterior part of the right vocal cord is atrophied, suggesting a right thyroarytenoid muscle palsy, which is the principal adductor of the vocal cord, and the right laryngeal ventricle is distended with air. Then coming superiorly at the level of the laryngopharynx, you see the right aryepiglottic fold is thickened and medially rotated with distension of the right pyriform sinus. All these findings suggest right vocal cord palsy owing to recurrent laryngeal nerve involvement. Recurrent laryngeal nerve is a branch of the vagus nerve and it is the principal nerve supplying the intrinsic muscles of the larynx. So once we have found that there is vocal cord palsy and which is because of the involvement of the recurrent laryngeal nerve, next step is to find the exact cause of recurrent laryngeal neuropathy. We cannot see the nerves directly on CT scan, but we have to screen the entire course of the nerve from the brainstem to the mediastinum, as disease process anywhere along the course of the nerve can lead to vocal cord palsy because of stretching or compression or infiltration of the nerve. So let's quickly review the neural pathway. The vagus nerve arises from the brainstem, the nucleus ambiguous of the medulla, and after arising from the brainstem, it exits the cranial cavity via the jugular foramen. This is the jugular foramen. It is divided into pars nervosa anteriorly, pars vascularis posteriorly by this jugular spine. And these terms are actually a misnomer. Both the parts of the jugular foramen contain both neural as well as vascular structures. So coming back to the vagus nerve, it passes via the pars vascularis of jugular foramen accompanied by the internal jugular vein. Then it comes in the neck. It descends down the neck in the carotid sheath. Okay, let me come to the contrast scan, it will be better. After exiting the cranial cavity, the vagus nerve lies here within the carotid sheath. This is common carotid artery, this is internal jugular vein, and vagus nerve lies posterior to both of them within the carotid sheath, and it descends down the neck. Descends down, and once it comes in the anterior mediastinum, the vagus nerve gives rise to recurrent laryngeal nerve, which then crosses beneath subclavian artery on right side and arch of aorta on left side and goes posteriorly and comes to lie here in the tracheoesophageal groove on either side, and then it starts going back up. And then it reaches the larynx where it supplies the intrinsic muscles of larynx except the cricothyroid muscle, which is supplied by the superior laryngeal nerve. Superior laryngeal again is a branch of the vagus nerve. Let's come back to the jugular foramen. Within the jugular foramen lies the superior ganglion of the vagus nerve, which provides autonomic nerve supply to the visceral organs. And just below this jugular foramen lies the inferior ganglion of the vagus nerve, which gives rise to the superior laryngeal nerve, which supplies two things mainly. One, the cricothyroid muscle of the larynx, and secondly, the superior constrictor muscle of the pharynx. So coming back to the neck scan, we found that there is inferior laryngeal nerve involvement. If we just go superiorly at the level of the oropharynx, you see the uvula is in midline. If there is superior laryngeal nerve involvement as well, there will be atrophy of the superior constrictor muscle of the pharynx, which will lead to dilatation of the pharynx on the affected side along with contralateral deviation of the uvula. So in that case, we will say that there is recurrent laryngeal as well as superior laryngeal nerve involvement, so that will come under proximal vagal neuropathy. And if the superior laryngeal is spared, like in this case, and only the recurrent laryngeal is involved, then we call it a distal vagal neuropathy. Okay, so once we have concluded that there is a vocal cord palsy, there is recurrent laryngeal nerve involvement, the next step is to find the exact lesion which is causing recurrent laryngeal neuropathy. So we'll trace the entire course of the nerve right from the brain stem, any lesion here, any tumor or infarction or any skull base pathology like meningioma or metastasis or skull base osteomyelitis, any pathology affecting the vagus nerve in this region, or within the neck there can be vagal schwannoma, carotid body tumors, or even lymph nodal masses which are compressing the vagus nerve. Then coming down, within the neck there can be thyroid carcinomas also, which can sometimes infiltrate these nerves and cause vocal cord palsy. Then lower down within the mediastinum also there can be mass lesions, or there can be some vascular pathologies also, like in this case. What do we see? There is a vascular anomaly in this case. The arch of aorta is located on the right side, and whenever there is a right-sided aortic arch, we have to look at the branching pattern. Either there can be a mirror image branching pattern, or there can be an aberrant branch vessel. So we'll just trace the branch vessels. This is the first branch artery, that is the left common carotid. Then the second, the right common carotid. Then this is the third branch artery, arch artery, that is the right subclavian. And where is the left subclavian? The left subclavian is arising from the proximal part of the descending thoracic aorta. And if you notice, at the origin of the aberrant left subclavian artery, there is a diverticular outpouching from the proximal part of the descending thoracic aorta. This is called a Kummeral's diverticulum, which is located posterior to the esophagus. This is the esophagus. This is arch of aorta. This is proximal part of the descending thoracic aorta. This is a diverticular outpouching from the proximal part of descending thoracic aorta. And this diverticular outpouching located in the retroesophageal location is giving rise to this subclavian, left subclavian artery, which is aberrant. So we say that this is the aberrant left subclavian artery is arising from the Kummeral's diverticulum. And there is an associated right-sided aortic arch. This is a very rare vascular anomaly, and this vascular anomaly can present with compression symptoms due to compression of the trachea presenting with dyspnea, or compression of esophagus presenting with dysphagia. But the unusual point about our case is that here it is causing compression of the right recurrent laryngeal nerve in the tracheoesophageal groove, leading to vocal cord palsy. Here. By the way, this is known as the Sale sign. because of the thickening of the posterior part of the vocal cord and anterior dilatation of the laryngeal ventricle. This is known as the Sale sign, which is diagnostic of vocal cord palsy. So the take home points for today are: first, we have learned how to diagnose vocal cord palsy on CT scan using these signs: the thickening of the posterior part, the dilatation of the ventricle, the thickening of the aryepiglottic fold, dilatation of the piriform sinus. These are signs of vocal cord palsy. Next, we have learned how to differentiate between proximal and distal vagal neuropathy by looking at the level of the oropharynx, the uvula. And thirdly, we have seen how to trace the course of the nerve from the brainstem to the mediastinum to find the exact cause of the neuropathy. So friends, I hope this was helpful, and see you next time with another interesting case. Thank you so much.